Meeting of Ufo. Now tonight promises to be a very interesting meeting as we welcome tonight's guest, Julie Phelps. Now Julie has a background in psychology, being a former mental health worker, and also military background, having been an RAF mechanical propulsion engineer. Bit of a mouthful, that, yeah. She's been an operative for the SSP. Anyone know what SSP is? Yes, I know, Steve. It's the secret space program, and she'll tell you a bit about that, no doubt. Now, her interests also extend into the world of the Fae, which I know will interest some of our members here tonight. She may also be able to tell you a little about the Illuminati, which I believe she has some interest in. Maybe she will tell you, maybe she won't, I don't know. However, what pertains to tonight's talk is that, like a few of our members, she does possess psychic abilities. And she's an experiencer of contact with and abduction by interdimensional extraterrestrial beings. So those of you who have any questions about alien abductions, tonight may provide you with a few answers to those questions. So please put your hands together. Give us a warm Ufo welcome to Julie Phelps. Thank you.
Good evening. Oh, I think I'll get a bit closer. It's lovely to see you all here tonight. I'm going to be going through, first of all, a bit of my background, and then going through more of my experiences, and then the deeper level of things, because a lot of people talk about contact or being abducted, but then they don't go further of the perspective of the ETs themselves or the other beings, how their culture exists, how they view and their perception of things, which can differ from human beings. So there's there's positive and not so positive extraterrestrials and interdimensional beings. And so it's like driving things forward a little bit from what we generally hear about. I just thought it'd be a good idea to learn a bit more. And it's a learning process for me because it's ongoing. It's not static. And I don't know when things advance, but, you know, I have communication with more and more different beings. And as you step forward, it tends to be that more expands and you end up meeting more beings. And some of the beings do test you, but I'll go a bit further into that as I get on. So the first bit, I don't know if can we turn the lights down a little bit or not, or
yeah, Emma's going to do it now.
All right. Well, it's easier to see the screen then. But as you see here, the top image there, that was an image I created. So it's alpha to omega, so beginning to the end, and then the background is like from the matrix. So alpha to omega, beyond the matrix, is basically that image. That's what it represents. And as I said, I'm looking at the different cultures and beings and societies, and showing my own experiences. Right, if you go on to the next slide. Right, my background, the image on the left is me when I was younger in a flying suit, actually just before I was going up in the weather ship. A weather ship is like the first flight in the morning in the RAF, you can volunteer to go on it, so I wasn't a pilot as such in the normal Air Force, but I was an aircraft mechanic, propulsion, which aircraft engines, one of the very few actually at that time. There's only 13 women in the whole country, and at that time I just got told like an image to go to the recruitment, and this was linked to the Illuminati. Now I could go into great detail about the Illuminati, but maybe I'll do that a bit later. I prefer to focus on what I want to do about the beings first, but I'll be open to questions later as well. Right in the middle, that is a memory of one of the aircraft I was working on. It was very similar to that one, and that was in the 1980s. I was working on that sort of aircraft, and what they used was screen memories of me doing guard duty. So I was the only one on the base who was doing a week's guard duty every 3 weeks. And I was like, how am I doing a week's guard duty every 3 weeks? And it was like a vague memory of what was happening. But then after I went for deprogramming with Simon Parkes and also a group of others, they helped me regain my memories to what had occurred. So I'd had screen memories of vague guard duty, which would last 12 hours. But on the retrieval of these memories, I was taken in the old green canvas trucks, the old army trucks, to a base where we were working on advanced craft. They were experimental crafts, so there's various different sorts. Some of them were like a V shape, kind of quite a narrow V shape. One was like this. We didn't really work on saucer shapes. They didn't really work on those at that in that actual place. I mean, they were working all different types anyway. But it's not just me. A lot of people are finding they're breaking the mind control. Now, it wasn't just Simon Parkes and the other group that helped me. I was in Canada, and for about 2016 it started. I started to find myself at the back patio doors every morning about 3 o'clock, and there was a craft outside. And this, I've got a picture of it, so I've got photographs, and I'll show you that in a bit. Another picture here is they didn't just, the Illuminati used me as what they call a Medusa asset. I'd been initiated into the Illuminati from a young age, from about 9 years old, through trauma-based mind control. And it wasn't till later on they started to use me, and they used me as, very briefly, as espionage in that field, but not too much of that. Also as a beta sex slave, but that didn't happen for very long either. Now, I recall talking to, on the right there in the centre is Victor Rothschild. He was the head of the Rothschilds at that point, and I remember talking to him. This was on recall after I got my memories back. And RAF Halton, when I did part of my training, was owned by the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds Hall was not very far away. Waddington's Manor. To your right there is me talking to an Air Commodore. That was me on the normal line of the aircraft base. That was RAF Cranwell, actually. So next slide. This is just a brief background before I get into the deeper stuff. Then after the very day I left the Air Force, and this was this was 1989, this was just not long after the Marconi suicide cum murders that were happening. I was then I went from the RAF to work at Marconi, and this was at Doddington Road site in Lincoln, and I worked on advanced space and military microchips, or semiconductors as you called them. I was quality control, and we made a hell of a lot of chips, I can tell you. So at the top left is what we called a wafer. That's what they printed layers of metal and other things, some only an electron wide, so it's almost like a photographic layer they would put on, and then they'd have another layer. The photograph in the middle, that one is done from our site. It was an electron microscope image of some of the chips we were working on, low-level ones I would say, not the space and military ones. But that was the centre one. And to the left and to your right is the gives you an idea of what sort of circuitry we were looking at, and that's a tiny little speck of it. So you expand that out into a huge amount for one tiny little chip. It gives you an idea of how complicated they are. And then bottom left is the chip in the middle, and then the fine wires that go to what we call the package, which we have a lid over afterwards, and all you see is the black chip normally. But this is what it looks like underneath, which is the wires coming from the chip itself to the package, and they're finer than a human hair. So I was also involved in making sure that was done properly as well. And they were like a complex map, so you might have a little space that they could attach to, a bit like a sewing machine, and then they do it to the package. It was like a sewing machine, sort of using ultrasonics to connect them. And then of course the last one is of a chip, the circuit board. But I'll just give you, it's just a background really of what my regular background is. And then I went into psychology later on. Next. Right, with this one, I'll just read it for you. It's just easier for me to read it off here. I'm not doing much of this, it's going to be mainly just experiences. But the key points I've got here is about calling upon higher dimensional beings, or they won't respond. So that's about free will. So if you need support at any time, it's about calling up support from benevolent higher dimensional beings. You need to be specific as well. But it may be angels, it may be other higher dimensional beings, and they can support. But there are also races or beings that will actually specifically help you. And a good way of doing this is by expanding your consciousness through the Robert Monroe Gateway program, which I've got, and it helps, but I've had other help and support in doing this as well. But if you're not at that level, anything helps, like meditation, things like that. But it's really got to be quite focused meditation to help expand your consciousness in quite a way, so you can communicate telepathically with other beings. It's not quite like just ordinary meditation where you just got like a relaxation meditation or something like that. And as the second point here is, many beings will test you. The Fae especially will test you. So they'll sometimes some beings will try and scare you a bit, or they'll do something else. Other beings, they'll set you a task, and if you don't complete it, then they won't trust you enough to carry on. So it's whether you're worthwhile. It's basically proving if you're worthwhile as a being. You can imagine us doing the same thing, right? We're teaching a whole group of people, and some like kids, well, I'm not interested, you know what I mean, I can't be bothered. Well, it's like picking out people who are worthwhile teaching, worthwhile communicating with. So you need to step forward for some of these groups, not all of them, but some of them, you know. And some of the ones that I've been in contact with, I call them in-betweeners. So there's the really nasty ones, which I don't want to have anything to do with at all. And then you've got the in-betweeners who are very much hands-on, actually. They're more hands-on, in a manner of speaking, than the higher dimensionals. You can call the higher dimensionals in, but they're not physically protecting you in the same way. They may guide you to avoid a dangerous situation, so they might go, don't go down that road right now. They may come in and tell you that, do not. And if you don't listen to them, well, it's your tough luck, because if you don't listen, you might have some really serious incident. And this is what I've found. I've got to listen to them. So if they tell me not to do something, I won't do it. But if I'm doing something like a talk like this, I'll call in for support and to help protection. So, I mean, like I did a conference, a BASIS conference last year. I think it was the year before last year, actually. And a lady in the audience, she said, when you got up on stage and you started to talk, you were just starting to talk, and then I just crossed my legs, and through the window, I got shot by a flaming laser in my leg. And she said, I nearly screamed out, but she said it was aiming straight for you, but it hit me instead. But obviously they stopped once they realised they'd hit the wrong person. and so they didn't want to make themselves too obvious, so then that stopped. But that intervention kind of occurred. I mean, she wasn't badly injured, luckily, and I said, oh, I'm really sorry about that, but it wasn't my fault. But it just gives you an idea anyway, and I've had a lot of incidents like that where I've had interventions that have helped protect me in situations that have been extremely dangerous, especially in Canada, which I had some pretty miracle things happen there for me to escape alive, to say the least. Right, as I've already mentioned about the Gateway programme, that's the next point. It really is a good programme, and it's Robert Monroe. If you look that up, you can get like basic ones on the YouTube free, but the actual programme itself, it uses frequencies that helps expand your consciousness. Now there's 7 waves to the programme, and each wave has about 6 lessons. And you put headphones on, so it has frequencies in each ear, and it's very carefully developed. Wave 3, up to wave 3, the CIA used it for remote viewing. If you've heard of remote viewing, most of you will have done. It's been used by the military to spy on other places, and they tend to get about 5 people doing the remote viewing with targets, and that stops like your consciousness getting in the way. So what can happen when you remote view? Your conscious mind get in the way, and that'll cloud what you're actually looking at. But when you've got 5 independent people and you all get the same answer, you're pretty certain that that is an accurate reading of the situation. And it's widely used by all the forces, so it's one of those things that actually is more public now than it used to be. It used to be more secretive. They did do a kind of jokey, funny one as a movie, which was Men As Stare at Goats. And I'm in communication with a lot of remote viewers. So I'm in communication with Lynn Buchanan, who was the guy in The Man Who Stares at Goats. Also Dick Algire, he's a very good remote viewer as well. So there's Farsight Institute, they do remote viewing. These are more mainstream remote viewing and military remote viewing. Yeah, so, and I've already covered this really, but the defence against psychic attacks. They always try and get to me just before I do a talk. So like 3 days ago, I did have a bit of a negative entity trying to enter my room. And I I called in friends, but I also used recitation. So I lead the way, and then other beings help support. This is what I find really works. And if it's a really serious one, I sometimes call in friends who are also very good psychics who can help me as well, because I've been heavily targeted in the past. But as I've learnt, so like when I was hit by microwaving and they were burning my body, my eyes, my internal organs, my skin was burning, things like that. At first, it was a case of physical defence because I was learning, so like Malar, covering myself with that earth in my bed to try and prevent it. But then I was very fortunate that friends had communication with higher beings, and they brought, with permission, they got the higher beings, they asked if they would help me, and they brought a signal in to prevent this microwaving, which I was very close to death at one point. I was probably about 4 hours away from death because I had had enough of the pain. It was just too horrific because I couldn't escape it. Everywhere I went, they were following me with it, and I just like, but in different ways, they've tried to target me in different ways. But each time, although it's not very nice going through these things, in fact it's horrible, but then I've learned from it. Then I've learned to counter it, and then I'm thinking, I'm armed in that way now. And then it's got me into communication with other beings, and then it's stepped forward again. And then rather than seeing it as like, oh God, I'm a victim, it's like I'm a survivor, and I'm stepping forward, and Sodom, I'm going to keep stepping forward. I'm not going to beat me. So this is, but other people have helped me at really difficult points as well, because you know, at times you're like, oh God, I've had enough of this. But then just at that point, a friend comes in, or a being comes and has helped me. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I wouldn't be here without them, so I'm truly grateful. And after I'd gone through some of the deprogramming, then I realised that I didn't want anything to do with Palladians, and I thought, why? And then I asked Simon Parks, I said, what's my star group? What's my star group family? And he said, Palladians. I went, oh God. I thought, why am I thinking that? Why am I so sort of like anti-Palladian? I thought, well, everybody's Palladian. I was like, so is Palladians. But then I realised that was part of the programming. It's like, I wouldn't have anything to do with them, so I wasn't going to call them in for support, because it's like, oh, I don't want anything to do with them. So once I started calling them into support, it then, as the mind control broke, that's when my psychic ability started to really come back again. So then I started to communicate not with them, but with others and them. So, and then I was kind of invited up with a psychic connection to a ship, and also invited to join the alliance. Now this is a positive alliance. It's a number of other beings, types of beings, and it's kind of, it is very much a sort of physical separation. So your consciousness separates from your human body in a complete sense. So you're no longer in your human body. You literally go, your consciousness leaves your human body and then travels to where you have the meeting. And that happens quite a bit as well, because this is how the secret space program also can operate. Like the group, this was to do with the secret space program, why I was being targeted with microwave, and they didn't want me to wake up. I'd already been used in the program, but then I was dormant. I was getting older, they weren't using me anymore, so they put you on ice. You know what I mean? They're not using you at that point. But once Simon had spotted that I was under the control of the Illuminati, and then he helped me and others helped me to start breaking free. Obviously, you're tagged with electronic implants, or implants of different sorts. They know that then. And then they're trying to counteract you breaking free. I mean, I talked to other people who were involved, who knew me, and I know them. And it seems to be that they're afraid of us, because once we get our full capabilities back, and if we can join together, it really will be quite a force against these negative entities, and I'm learning all the time increasingly to do that. But that's not to say that everybody here hasn't got capabilities. It's just that we were trained in a different way, and then they use codes to prevent us using it in daily life. But then once you start breaking down the codes, then your advanced sort of psychic abilities and other abilities start to come to the fore. That doesn't mean your physical body is the same. You know, you don't look like a 27-year-old SAS person, although it'd be nice. But it's about separating the consciousness, and they have the capability of separating your consciousness and putting your body in different forms of avatars. Although the movie Avatar is supposed to be made up, they have got that capability. But what they have to do is they have to connect you to a complex computer system, and then they read your biorhythms in every sense, and then from a distance they can extract you from your body and then utilise you in various other ways. This is how they do it. And as I said, they stopped doing this, and also they do genetic experiments and one thing and another. But then what happened with me, I managed to, after all the targeting I got, because it was physical targeting too, my internet was cut, my cable was cut, packages were intercepted, I got shot in the leg with a laser in Canada, this was all in Canada. All these things happened just to demoralise me. And then they started to attack my family with voice to skull, and then they started to attack me, and they were telling me they were going to kill my whole family and then, you know, keep me alive but in a terrible way, sort of thing, and that was demoralising. But then I learned to fight back, and I thought, well, how can I combat this? It was demoralising. But I thought, no, I'm going to remote view them back. So because they made the mistake of not using the computer at that time, they used a man at the other side to do the voice to school. I could remote view back to him. And instead of attacking him, I said to him, you know, do you go home at the end of the week thinking, oh, isn't this wonderful? I've driven somebody to suicide who was a very nice person. Or, you know, I've really tortured a very nice person all week. You know, it's like, do you really get good satisfaction from this? Well, this was going straight into his consciousness. He couldn't block that out. So from that, I got his name. He says, I can't do this to you anymore. And then I heard him arguing with his supervisor. I was like, oh, good. And so instead of me attacking him back, causing pain, because all he would have done is turn the dials up, is I did the opposite. I went for his consciousness. So I went for his feeling of guilt. And that's the bit I targeted. Because I was being genuine, so he knew that. And then that stopped. That stopped the whole thing. But 3 days later, I was approached from another group, and they were called, and they did voice and vision to school. They were even more advanced, and they were a deep underground military base, but they were a positive group. And they were a Russian group, actually. And they were Black Wolf Special Operations with an image of a black wolf on the... And they showed me all the guys, and they showed me where they were, they showed me what they were doing and everything else. So I said, well, I agree, as long as it's for benevolent reasons and as long as we're fighting the negative. I said, I won't do anything else. So that is what I agreed to. So that was in 3 days later, they picked me up. I thought, oh, okay. But then they abducted me, well, didn't abduct, but they took me into like a triangular craft, like the TRB, well, the triangular craft, I can never remember names and things, but the black triangles. They took me on board that, and then they took me to be programmed in their computer system, which was like a white room and a white chair, and they plug you in and stuff. And that's so that they could read my biorhythms properly. And so they could use me then in their system. Because what we've got now is a bit complicated even on Earth, because we've not just got, you go, oh, it's the Russians or it's the Americans. No, there's corporations, there's different groups involved. There's groups that are involved as corporations and in a positive way, and then there's ones that are in the negative way. So it gets quite complicated now, and some of the groups are working with ETs, more benevolent ETs. Some of the groups are working with Draco reptilians or other reptilian groups which aren't positive, and some groups aren't aware either. They're so mind controlled, they're remotely influenced to make decisions, and they don't even know that they're not making the decision. They think they're making a valid judgment when actually they're not making the decision at all. The ETs are putting that thought to make that decision in their minds, and they're just following it. And that's happening a great deal, because when I went to the space conference, and I was invited last year and year before, and it was at Farnborough, and they had like Lockheed Martin and all the rest of them, Raytheon. What I found is that, because I could remote view a lot of the audience there, it was tiring, but I could remote view them all to a level and see what they knew. And most of them were so compartmentalised, all they knew was their daily bit of the job. They didn't know anything. Then some of the guys higher up, because like the UK, well, Europe and UK head of Lockheed, he was like a bit more aware, but even he was influenced. A lot of them are being influenced and they don't even know it. And the last one I went to, the Air Commodore was there, and I told him, I went up to him, and I says, look, a lot of this is you're being remote influenced. This is what I'm seeing. So I had the nerve to go up and see it, tell him, because I thought, I'll tell the truth, I don't care. But, they need to know this, and they're not aware. He wasn't aware, and he wasn't. So this just gives you an idea. And also being invited to, something like more official gives a bit more credence to what I'm telling you, basically. I mean, I'm showing images, I've got all the documents and stuff to what I did in the forces, except for the more secret things, obviously, that's kept away from anybody. But next slide. Now, this happened, was it? I can't give you an exact year, but it was with my husband in Canada. So I moved out to Canada in 2011. I think it was like between 2013 and 15. So much has happened since then. It's hard to be exact with the year. But me and my husband were both abducted by reptilians. And I thought they were Draco reptilians, but on the picture on the right is the image drawn by Elena Danan. She's got a book on various alien races, and in fact I've got the book but I haven't brought it with me. Now, I recognise some of the races in the book, but this was the race that abducted me and my husband, and it was classed as extremely dangerous, which I would definitely agree. So my image, or my drawing, which was a basic drawing, is on the left, and that's of one of these reptilians, which was blooming tall and big and very ferocious, absolutely terrifying. And it was behind fencing that was about builders fencing, temporary fencing bolted together, that was about 6 foot tall. And it was at Radar Hill. It was just outside Radar Hill, because I found it afterwards on the maps. And that's on the next slide, actually. It'll show you where it is. But the image in the centre is very much what they were like. They did eat humans, these ones, because when we were abducted, what we did is we woke up in this line. We were flanked both sides with builder's fence, and at the end there was a warehouse, and all the other people in line, they were in twos, were all in hypnotic states except us. We'd come out of it, and there was like reptilians at the end taking people into the warehouse, and then our awful screams, which I knew they were being killed in there. I mean, this was absolutely terrifying for me. I mean, I was absolutely, but my husband looked a bit calmer because he'd been through so many military events that were tough military events in his life, that he was a bit calmer than me. But he looked at me, and we'd already decided years before that if anything, because we're both ex-military, we'd decided if we ever found ourselves in a situation like that, that we'd fight. We don't care. We're not going to just stand there and be taken. So as we were thinking this, the reptilian, which was just by the fence by us, obviously we were out of hypnotic state, so they knew straight away we were out of that state. So he forced me to walk over to the fence first, and then he lifted me up, and he pulled me to his head, but calming me down at the time because I was in a bit of a state. And he says, "Don't judge us, you eat meat." So from that, I knew exactly what he meant. He meant that this is just an abattoir, and you're the cattle. What's your problem? And this is his attitude. And it did make me think, well, yeah, that is true. I can't deny that. So, I mean, since then, I haven't physically been able to eat meat. I eat fish, but I can't eat meat, because even like getting it close to me and trying to eat it, I can't do it. I feel violently sick, because his words come back to me at that point, and I just can't do it. But I couldn't really disagree with him. And then my husband got picked up, and what they said to him is, because he's that bit tougher than me, they said, well, if they don't make the cut, if our own species does not make the cut, we eat them too. But this reptilian group is a particularly nasty one. Not all reptilians are bad. Some reptilians are benevolent to other beings, but these particular group appear to be a bit of a mercenary group, and after profit or whatever for trading with, eating people, but also trading body parts, things like that. But, this is just a fact of life. I mean, they have those videos now, 411 missing people. And so, all this sort of thing, it does go on, and there's a lot more increasing evidence to prove it and support it anyway. But if you go to the next slide, and it's not all negative, I'm talking the negative, and I'm going to the better stuff. With this one, it shows you again the image. This is a very good image of the sort of reptilian I saw. And this here is the coordinates of where I was abducted to, because I went on flipping Google Earth and they banned me. They blanked out the whole of North and South America with a white, like, diamond shape. No matter how I tried to get on Google Earth, I couldn't get on it to look. So in the end, I went on Google Maps, and I got it through Google Maps. And so the top part, in a way, the silvery look, almost looks like a human arms and head and stuff. I don't know why that is. It may be an aerial image, I'm not sure, to give an indication where they are. Then the warehouse is at the top, and then the builder's fence is to the right, which has been folded up and stacked up. And then below, if you look at that, was very close to the right of this image, and it looks like an entrance to underground base. It's the shadow that does look like an entrance. And this is Radio Hill. It is in Dulcie area, but it's not at Dulcie. So it's not at Area 51, it's a slightly different location, but this is what I found. I knew it was that sort of area by, when we were there, it was like this rough shrubland. I thought, well, the only where you get this sort of air and rough shrubland is sort of like New Mexico area. So I started looking all around New Mexico, you know, gradually, because I was like, I'm going to find this bloody place they took us. So, and I showed my husband, and he was very good at strategy, and he agreed it was definitely the place. So if you want to go on to the next image. Right, this I took over in Fleetwood, and it was, what year was it? When did I get back? 2019. It was 2020, this. And I was told by the Palladians to go outside. This was about midnight in Fleetwood. It was in summer, so it was quite warm. And I was sitting on my swing, and they said, oh, look up. It looked like there was a thunderstorm going on, but no thunder, no sound at all. I thought, this is odd. But they told me to take some photographs. I only had my iPad, that's all I had, because I hadn't, at that time, you know, got anything else. And so I thought, I'll take some photographs like they told me with my iPad. And then when I was looking, I could see some of these images, but not very clearly. And on the left is a Palladian ship, and it was cloaked at first, but then it kind of appeared out a bit more, and it was beaming like lasers at the other one, which you can't see wonderfully, but if you can make out a slight sphere in between the clouds, there is a sphere there. And that was a Draco ship. And they were having a bit of a Mexican standoff. They didn't hurt each other, but they were just like giving bow shots between each other. You could see the lasers going one way and then going the other way and then going the other way. So that went on for about half an hour to 3/4 an hour, but I was sitting there watching it and took a few photographs, basically. So that's in England. That's over Fleetwood. Why they were there fighting, I'm not sure, because I have had the Draco come in since to my house, but I called in friends to get rid of them, and that was caught on when I was on Zoom with somebody else, and they are psychic, and they said, you've got reptilians coming in. I said, oh no. My dog started to woof and growl. My dog's very psychic, she picks up on them, and she was like woof, woof, woof against the window, and I could sense them coming in, and I was like, I got that sense of real fear, but I was fighting it. I thought, no, don't be frightened, call in support. So I called in support, and again they tried this a few months later after that, and I was outside, the dog picked up on it, I went outside, and I could sense one appearing at the bottom of the garden. I couldn't quite see it, but I could sense it starting to come in, and every single cell of my body was saying, run, lock the door, run, Julie. And I just, and literally every cell in my body, but I thought, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do it. My dog was, at this point, woofing up behind me, as she does, you know, like, I'll hide behind mum. And I thought, no. And again, I called in friends, and they did get rid of them. So, you know, that does mean we can fight this by calling in different beings. As it was, I've made friends with certain beings that are rather unusual, which were a test, but I'll go on to that in a few minutes. So if you go into the next image, thank you. Right, this is a bit of a joke. Oh my goodness. Can't read them there very well. Right, as you see the top left, why Earthlings never use telepathy. Of course, it's because because they have a lot to hide from each other. Well, although I'm not kind of making it a joke particularly, it does make a point. We do have a lot to hide from each other, and if we had telepathy, we'd know exactly what all the other people were thinking. So if they thought, oh, I really hate that person, we'd know. And look at all the hidden stuff in the military, look at all the hidden stuff in the governments and everything else. Well, this is the benefit of actually, say, learning the Gateway programme. I mean, I respect people's privacy, and this is what you can do when you're on board ships too. What you can do, although that's a kind of joke saying you can know what everybody's thinking, actually you can direct it to one person, or you can direct it to a group, otherwise you'd just be deafened by so many different conversations. But it is a good point about hidden information that we're not told as the general public. And I think Peter Paget coined it because he was ex-spook. He coined it that we know, but you don't know. We do all these secrets to stop the general public from knowing what's going on. Because once we all know what's going on, well, things will change on this planet. And hopefully it will do anyway. The other thing is, the one on the right is about, what does it say? That was not the transmission button. So in other words, they made them ashes because they pressed the wrong button. So that's a kind of indicator of, like, you know, just because a race is an ET race does not mean it's better than us. We are actually multi-dimensional beings, and some of these other beings are not very. They've got technology, but they don't have the capability that we actually have if we develop it. We actually are very, very powerful psychics if we start developing that side and break down the programming that we've all had. You know, it's not just me who had the monarch-style Illuminati mind control, which was trauma-based, but everybody here, from the moment you're born, you're told what to think, really. You know, through the media, through your parents, through your society, through your culture, and that's all we know. If you're born in a certain place in, say, Saudi Arabia, and you're brought up that the only way is Wahhabi Islam, which is a very strict form of Islam, well, it's the only thing you've known. So how would you know that there's a different way, that you should be more free or something like that? You don't know, because you've never experienced it. Well, it's the same with things with other cultures and other beings from other planets. And the picture at the bottom is what we are. Although that shows a cow, we know about the cattle mutilations and about how mind control and things, but it's what we are. It's like the reptilian that abducted me. He used mind control on me. And why are we susceptible to this mind control or hypnosis? This is a question I always thought. Well, it's been inbred in us so it can be controlled, like a organic open farm, which is what, you know, they see. Many species see us as the reptilians and other negative species. They see them as their cattle. That's what they see us as. Maybe a food source, or to be utilised in other ways, whatever. But yeah, next image, thanks. Right, these are some more images. Right, the one on the left, and the image down the one is me drawing it in more detail. So this was taken in Canada. There was about 5 of them in the sky, and there was about 9 craft coming and going all the time. Now, these were the same craft who came in and helped break the mind control with me, and that I was seeing basically every night. I was finding myself at the back door. Now, they were positive. There were more Palladians on there. There's other beings on there, but Palladians. And Palladians is a generic. I'm saying that loosely. They were human, mostly humanoid, but all of them were humanoid on board. Some of them were blonde, like Nordic types. There was a blue one that's like, I don't know if it's on, the centre bottom one. That was a very benevolent one. I did a model of that one. It was about the same height as me. It wasn't really tall, but extremely warm and benevolent being. And it was blue, and it had a blue like jumpsuit on. Then the top centre one, that was also taken in Canada. Now that's a higher dimensional craft. The higher dimensional craft, as I know myself, they're created by genetics. So they take DNA of an individual, whatever species, whatever, normally higher dimensional being. Then they kind of grow the ship, and so that ship is then completely linked to you forever. I mean, as far as I know, I've got a ship linked to me as other people I know have, but I can't bring it down here because it's a different dimension, and I'm in a 3D physical body. But I can go up and enter it. But what it is it outlives my physical body. It's like millions of years old, and it doesn't deteriorate like us, like our human, because this is really a shell. It's it's a skin. It allows us to breathe the air on Earth and to exist in reasonably exist with clothing in our climate, with heating, so we're not perfect, but it allows us to breathe the air and everything else on planet Earth. Whereas if we came in a different form, we would have to wear a suit or something else to enhance us to be able to stay on Earth. So that's a benefit of certain beings who are generally not Earth-based. They will incarnate onto the planet in a human form with all the human frailties, because they can't just live here. They can't just live in our climate or whatever, or our atmosphere. And then to the right is like a bit like some of the ones I did see on the ship, which were blonde. They were Palladians types or Nordic types, and they were very good sense of humour. Actually, they were really funny. But they drank a liquid. They didn't eat food, because I was talking to them about it. They were doing a little bit of healing with me from my targeting and that. That's when I went up the ship. And afterwards I had a look round the ship, and the corridors and everything were very crystalline. It was a crystalline ship, but they had crew areas. They had a holodeck, which was very weird. You went into it, because I explored and I went in, and I wanted to be back in England, would you believe, because I was in Canada, so I wanted to be in a woodland in England. And I was walking through it and I'm thinking, okay. And I was connecting with one of my other friends too, and I says, okay, I'm walking in here, how do I get out? There's no door. Where's the door? What do I do now? Because it felt like you were literally there. It didn't feel like there was any difference. It was completely natural feeling. And I was like, oh God, how do I get out? And he was like communicating with me, right, you've got to think of the door so that you can get out. I went, okay. And then the door appeared. It was like, right, this is how you get out. And but then I went around again, further around the deck, and then I went into the engine compartment. Now there you could see like crystals that were going from the very top to the very bottom. And in the centre there's like a plasma energy, and this is what ran the ship. And what it did is it created you see, oh you can't see it very well there, but it created like a force field around the ship, a bit like a planetary force field. The energy went up the top and down the bottom, but it was very, very powerful energy, so no ship could really attack it when it had that field operating. It was really, really powerful. And the higher dimensional ships, they exist in a quantum vacuum, so they're kind of anywhere in space at one time. They're not like ships that have to go through wormholes. They can travel at the speed of consciousness. They're totally different. They exist outside of time and space. They are a different sort of craft. But not all of the ships are like that. They're specialised ships. So a lot of the ships you see are not the higher dimensional ships. They are more lower dimensional that have to open portals, go through wormholes or things like that. But they are anti-gravity ships. And the one on the right, I was sitting waiting for my husband in a pharmacy. He was going to the pharmacy and I was in the car park waiting. I saw this cloud. I saw this bank of clouds going one way and then one cloud going the other way. I thought, well, that's not right. I thought, how come one cloud is going the opposite direction? So I thought, well, I'll take some photographs of that. Because my husband always took nature photographs, so he always had a camera on board. So I took some photographs, and that's what came out there. So that was like, I'm not quite sure if it was craft coming out of a portal or if it was all one craft, I'm not really sure, but that's what showed up. Right, next image. Right, this is again, this isn't, although these are not the actual ship, the images on the right and left, this is the natural shape of the higher dimensional craft that I'm talking about. It would have straighter wings, but it was organic. It was like a living being of itself. It exists with its own type of, although it's got my DNA, and I've also communicated with other SS people who have similar ships. It's very much a living flesh sort of living being ship, but when you go in them, there's no door, and like the front is like curved like that, but that's to do with frequencies and vibrations, so it can create the energy field around it. And what you do is it kind of envelops you. So you're standing outside, and then you're inside. There's no door. It just kind of the matter changes, and it creates a bubble around you, and then you're inside the ship. So it can also create any atmosphere inside. It's like a console. I remember a console, and this was drawn by a friend of mine who had similar experience to Centre One. He did a better drawing than me, and that is like a living console. It's like an organic console, and at the side are gills, and they were like, that created the atmosphere inside the ship. So he actually drew that image, but not me, but we both, he's in Australia, and his father was involved in Area 51, and him and his wife had been abducted quite a lot. He was also involved in developing high-level lasers in the Vietnam War, and then was used by the CIA after that. But and then he has tried to escape from that, and then they both suffered really bad cancers, but they are recovering, cross fingers. But next image. Right. As I was saying about testing earlier, the one creature on this planet that I have always been most terrified of my entire life has been spiders and arachnids. I was like, yeah, okay. And as I was saying, an ultimate test, I don't know if it's a test from God or a test from the Alliance, is the very species that I've now become accustomed and accepted by are very large arachnids. They're not like your garden spiders, so they don't scuttle around like that. But to say that was a test is an understatement for me. I thought, you can't have a more testing test for me than this. And what happened is I was with a friend, and I recalled an incident when I was on a base, and it was a party, and these guys who were scientists with the lab coats took me in the back room. So, oh, Judy, we've got something so exciting to show you. So I went to the back room, and what they showed me was a spliced human arachnid. And I cried. I was horrified at what they did. And I shouted at them, and I was really very, very distressed about that. And what I didn't know at the time, but I recalled later, is they'd actually spliced some of my DNA in this, because they were doing DNA experiments, taking DNA from various people. And you'll find, I mean, there's an example, a more mainstream example you can look online, is they've spliced together arachnids and goats. This is to create, and you can look this up, is to create the milk from the goat with the spider web like lactose or lactic sort of milk that will form like spider thread. So you can even look that up in the mainstream as an example. And you think they haven't spliced together other things, they've spliced together anything you can imagine. So as a consequence, I was horrified at that time. But more recently, when I was doing the deprogramming, one of my psychic friends said, well, see how you keep going on about this thing. And he says, well, see how it is now, see if it's still alive. So he remote viewed it, and he could take me as well at the same time, because we can connect. He's part Native American. And I connected, and I saw him, and he's a lot bigger now. He's about 7 foot now, and kind of human head and arachnid body. And I just wept. I just cried buckets. And he was like, yeah, okay, you've got a real emotional point about this. And I was just letting so much emotion go because I felt him completely. And I said, you know, you've got my DNA in you. And despite the fact of my terror at spiders, I will accept you as my son because you need love. You need love because you haven't got anybody. And so that's what I did. And at that point, it was only a few days later, an image came through of, like the bottom right, of a giant, very, very benevolent arachnid. And it was a giant jumping spider, and it had like grey hair, and it was obviously an elder. Now it came in and it realised what I'd done, because they're extremely psychic and precogs, these ones, and they're benevolent. They don't eat any insect or any beetles or humans or anything else. What they do is they farm this red, like mossy lichen sort of stuff. They show me, and what they show me is their culture. They said, right, they do live here, some are in Britain, some are elsewhere, they do live here, but slightly in a pocket dimension. And they won't show themselves to anybody who's scared or anything like that. But if you look up ancient Celtics, some of the ancient Celtic people used to communicate them and revere them as very wise, because they are precogs. And they've been extremely informative of me, and they communicated with me psychically, and I could see them, but they calmed me as well to help me so I didn't panic or anything. But I learned that what they did, they are very controlling of their breed, like most other beings of other planets, other cultures. They can control their population. They don't kill their population, they don't bump them off, but they do only allow so many to breed. And you can take a step back from our culture and say, why do we have all this strong sex drive? Why do we have this strong urge to all procreate? And a lot of the religions say over procreate, and so we get really, really vast numbers of people. And I'm not against anybody having children, that's not it, but it's about the value. They put so much value on their young, and so do other cultures, that they're longer lived. So, everybody can have a child, but it may be longer down the line, because then their ages aren't cut off like we are. Because we're farmed like an open cattle system. Right, let's get the breeding stock going. We've got the breeding stock, let's do a harvest. And that's what they do here. And it's like, other cultures just don't do that. They literally value life so much. They control it, but in a benevolent way. These are the higher dimensionals too, all of them. They really do value life. Even the reptilians only breed to a certain amount. But their young have to achieve a certain level, or they're not valued. So as I said, certain groups of the reptilians will bump their own off if they don't get to a certain level. It's only really humans who have this different view that's been propagated. But I mean, look at life now. We've been targeted in so many different ways. We should live a lot longer than we do. But we've been targeted, we've been poisoned, one thing and another. And as I said various times, like at the beginning of the pandemic, what did they do? what they quietly pass through law is you have to opt out of organ donation. Why is that at just that time? Not any other time, but just that time. So everybody, if you're not opted out of organ donation, you're opted in. But it doesn't say those organs and everything else is for human beings. It doesn't specifically say, well, if you die for whatever reason, your body can be, your lung or your heart can be used in another human. It doesn't say that. So it opens the gate to other beings. You're giving permission for other beings. So then if you die or in other circumstances, they can take you. And this is a crafty way. And I'm sure the people who brought this law in were totally unaware of this. They were probably mind influenced, saying, oh, we're a bit short of organs, so let's make it law that, you have to opt out, but totally unaware of the greater consequences of those actions. But it's something to bear in mind, because I most certainly opted out, and so has my son. Now, here, in different sorts of arachnids, now, I was told there's something called the Great Weaving, and the arachnids are very much... this is looking at a completely different perspective from a human perspective. They are involved in, some of the higher dimensional arachnids are involved in creating energy lines throughout the universe. So these are galaxies and the web of galaxies. And they're telling me that some of the higher dimensional arachnids form these with energy lines. And of course, we know that arachnids can fly in the air using electromagnetics, using the web as a form of electromagnetic way of flying through the air. So it's not just caught on the breeze and they start flying off. It is a kind of electromagnetic form. And then, so we've got all these aspects, and then the centre bit is very interesting. Now, if you've heard of Bohemian Grove, that's where a lot of the satanic and Baal groups meet, or Moloch, who worship the Moloch and things like that, which is the owl. Now here, it's quite interesting, it says, weaving spiders come not here. So it's like, it's a defence seal they put on Bohemian Grove to stop benevolent arachnids interfering with their negative practices. Now, this is not to say that all arachnids are positive either. You've got to discern scientifically what is a negative being and a positive being. There are some arachnids that are territorial and will not be very good, like on Mars. There's some that are territorial. You don't go near them because it will eat you. And, there's ordinary spiders that aren't at the same level. They can be influenced by negative. But you need to develop the psychic capability of saying, is this a positive, is this a negative, and then connect to see. And this is like when a ship flies over, what I do is remote view it. Well, are you human, are you negative, or are you positive? Because some of the ships look the same now, so it's not easy to discern by just looking at the shape of the ship. It could be negative, it could be positive. Comes in where you can discern, oh God, should I run away, should I not? What's going on here? It's the only way you can work it out. I do it all the time when I see craft going over, which I see regularly. I think, is that a good one, bad one? I kind of remote view it and think, oh, that's okay, that's a good one. Or that's a really nasty one, I better put shielding up and call friends in. So that's that. And now, I've also, like, on the right there, that's a naga. A naga is a kind of serpenty snake, and I've seen them. I've seen them in my stream. Yet they're protection from our land. So they're not necessarily. They look a bit scary, but actually, some of these beings can be protection. They're not necessarily going to. You've got to treat them with respect. But they're an individual being. As long as you treat them with respect, they'll treat you with respect. And if you move forward enough, they'll actually help protect you too. So that just gives you an idea of what more of an idea on this planet of how to communicate with different beings. They do exist in different ways than us. I'm still learning very much. More recently, I saw 2 orange craft go across the sky. That was last year, I think. And then the two orange crafts, oh, I knew they were, because I was right up high and I saw them go across, oh, they're spheres. Oh. I was trying to communicate with them. I thought, well, they're not negative, but what are they? I can't quite tune in. And it wasn't until I got with some friends who were psychic and we got together and we tried to remote view back what they were. And then I connected and they connected with them. And they were lion beings. Well, I'd never connected with them before, so I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Kind of high. and you know, they communicate back, but I don't know a great deal about them. But I knew they were okay, that's all I know. I don't have a huge connection with the lion beings. But they weren't negative, I know that. But that's kind of, and I can call upon them as well if necessary, but I don't have much more communication than that. But I might do in the future. It may be that they come forward more and I learn their culture more and how they exist and how they interact with each other and things like that, because I am interested in other cultures. I've always been interested in other cultures on the planet, and I'm interested in other cultures on different planets and different beings, because they can sometimes give a really good beneficial perspective to us on Earth of how to live or how to exist in a better way, or to understand things in a better way. You know, in a more benevolent way, or how do we manage this? Can we fight? If we fight, are we bad? You know, if we kill a reptilian, is that really bad? Or, you know, are we going to be karma and punished for that? Or how do we fight them? What do we do? You know, and you can learn this from other beings and what you can do from them. You know, it's all a learning process. So if you go to the next slide. Right, this is another connection I got. So I go from word go, I've had connection with ghosts, spirits, you name it. So it's not just been ETs, that's just a later thing. But that I managed to communicate with them after I got mind control out. But I've always had paranormal experiences my whole life. No, it's just normal for me. And on the left, a psychologist of mine that I knew some years ago, he had like a little bit of fabric from, that's Padre Pio on the left, is Saint Padre Pio. He had stigmata. Anyway, I felt the fabric and I connected with him. Now, you may not be Roman Catholic or anything like that, and I'm not Roman Catholic, but with him, he was very spiritual, and I connected with him, and he's been helping me. And he and others have been helping me, and I have done Latin recitations when I've been attacked by satanic. And through that, it has worked. I'm like, okay, if it works, I don't care. Why it works, I don't know, but it works, and that's good enough for me. But he's been teaching me certain things. Again, I'm very respectful to him and things like that, so I'm very, very blessed to have his support. And then, of course, Archangel Michael in the middle. I have once seen Archangel Michael. I knew it was going to be a little bit difficult time. He said everything was going to be all right, but at the time I knew things weren't going to be all right. So I thought, oh, well, he's saying things are going to be all right, but didn't feel it to me. But actually, he was right in the long term, but in the short term, it was pretty bad. But it was phenomenal energy. It was like a blue energy came in, really relaxed me, and I didn't want him to go. I was like, oh, please stay. But and then our own consciousness and our own abilities, as we develop more, there's nothing stopping us raising up to be a level of an angelic or something like that in time as we progress. And the moment we're earthed in a human body, so our consciousness is very difficult to expand to that level because we're kind of trapped in a clamp of this reality, consciousness, perception. And because when I went up to the Pleiadian ship and I was taken up there, it was like a clamp came off my head and my perception expanded. When I came back down to earth, it was like a clamp went straight on my head again. It was so heavy down here. It's like a heavy feeling. But hopefully we will break free of this heavy feeling and we will be able to rise to that higher level. And that's what a lot of beings are trying to support us in doing that. But there's a lot we have to lead the way. You know, every single person here has a key role. You know, we all have key roles in this. It's all self-development, and then to help other people as well. So if you go to the next slide. And warriors confront evil that most people refuse to acknowledge. So some people don't even understand there are ETs or other beings. They don't understand even the basics of the manipulation the governments are doing, or even the government personnel themselves being manipulated psychically or by other beings. So it's about increasing our knowledge and also fighting in the spiritual way, because it's partly a spiritual battle, to actually free our planet and everybody on it, and every being on it. So it's not just human beings, all the other beings. Animal spirits, tree spirits, fae, all the beings on our planet are in danger from all this negative beings and energies, because they're starting to, especially the transhumanists, it's starting to infiltrate into their dimensions. So, you know, it's not just us at risk, they're at risk too. So next slide. So this is about us. So as I said there, we're all multi-dimensional beings, and we are. We're all multi-dimensional beings. Our physical bodies is only one element of who we are. We're very much more consciousness, but on Earth we have to realise we've got a human body, we need to look after it if we can. And, you know, and while we're here as a human being, we have that connection to Mother Earth. They're trying to break it, but we have a strong connection than any other beings other than other fae and things like that. So we are very powerful on this planet because we were born here. Some of these other negative beings are not born here. We are. So we have the right to be here. And as such, we have the capability of starting to fight these if our consciousness, if we can break free of this consciousness traps. And this is what, you know, this is what I'm learning. I'm learning from, you know, from being really trapped. I mean, I was always aware of governments and things like that, but I was not aware of the ETs and all the other beings as much as I am now. And as I'm stepping forward, I'm learning more. And I'm learning more of how they operate. So, and, you know, like, be a beacon. All of us, be a beacon. Beacon of light. And it has got to be from the heart. So when you're communicating with other beings, it needs to be from the heart. You need to be totally genuine. They know. So if you're not genuine, they'll know you're not genuine. So, like, you know, there's no getting away from it. But, yeah, I think that's all. I think, next slide, if there is one. I don't know if there is one. That's the last one. Yeah, that's the last one. So if there's any questions, feel free. So I've got time for a few questions.
Thank you.
I think you answered all the questions. That's why there's a fall of silence.
Oh, thank you. I know I've covered a lot tonight, so I appreciate that. It was like, God, there's all these different things. And if you're anything like me, I go over and think, oh, I could have done with answering that. Yeah,
okay. You studied psychology.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of it was to do with the battle between the positive and the negative of our human existence. So what about with psychology? There's a guy, Carl Jung, and he mentions about the shadow and how we control it.
Yeah, well, the shadow is quite complex. Now, I understand Carl Jung was one of my favourite psychologists, actually. And I was a member of the now I'm going to... I can't remember the name of it now. Oh God. It was the sort of paranormal side of psychology. It's with the British Psychological Society and everything. But they focused on Carl Jung and people of that nature, and others about ghosts and things like that. Yeah, we all, it's again, it's very easy to have attachments of the dark side, and we do need to integrate the shadow side, but that's all part of like our consciousness development. There's very different aspects, so it's about healing through psychology, but also spiritually, because you can, unbeknown, have negative attachment and you don't even know it. So sometimes you can find that out by psychics or like the quantum hypnosis, things like that. They'll find out if you've got any attachments that are attached to you. Also, if you start getting really negative thoughts that seem to be external, they probably are external. They're either frequency, increasingly now there's a mixture, so you get frequencies from, like we were talking about the other day, that some of the news channels have been pumping out subliminals for various things. So you've got to watch that. You can't hear subliminals. If you study hypnotherapy, and which I have studied, subliminals, you can't hear them, but they're pumped out, and hopefully positive ones if you get a positive meditation, but you can't physically hear them. So there's that influence that you can be influenced by, but also demonic, imps, jinn, and other negative beings. They can start infiltrating your life, and of course it can be triggered by, you know, things like lockdowns or some tragedy in your life or some trauma, and then they start feeding in negative, like belittling things about you. You know, you might start thinking it's your internal voice or your internal consciousness saying, you're not good enough, you're useless at this, oh, do this, do that, you know. And it's not schizophrenia, it is actually from the negative trying to lower your vibration so they can feed off you, because they feed off your lower vibration, and they love it when there's trauma. And if there's any war zones, the demonic are flying over, feeding off all the trauma that's going on, and that's what they love, and that's what they try and trigger. So you've got negative ETs trying to trigger certain things, and you've got negative, like I said, jinn and things like that trying to trigger things. And there's been a huge increase, because I do listen to some of the exorcists who are currently have a huge increase of people being possessed, and there's different levels of possession. There's obsession is part of a beginning stage of possession. There's other things, and it's about being aware of this. I mean, I use recitations because my late husband, when he was younger, was involved in a satanic group. Now, through that, he left that because he knew how bad they were, but later on they caught up, and that was part of what I was challenged with, is they were after him and after me. Well, they would send frigging demonic after us. And so, you know, and luckily I had friends who helped me learn to fight it, and sometimes they had to come in. I mean, I was on a Zoom call with a friend, and I had a mirror behind me one day, and I could feel this real negative energy coming in the room, and the lights started to dim. And as it dimmed, the mirror started to go pitch black. It went slowly across the mirror, pitch black, and that was a negative entity coming in. And I was like, oh God, and I did recitations, it went away a bit, I stopped, it came back again, I thought, oh dear, I can't get rid of this, what do I do? And I had to call in friends to help me, because I couldn't get rid of it myself, I wasn't quite good enough at getting rid of it. So, but like negative thoughts, things like that, prayers do help, positive meditations help, these sort of things really do help. Doing things you enjoy helps. I mean, literally, I mean, what's been happening on the planet recently? They've been trying to cut down on the things we enjoy, you know, fun, games, singing, laughter, flipping, dancing, or enjoying going out into a pub with other people. They're trying to sort of isolate us in our own rooms or whatever, and then it's hard to go out then, especially when you've been through that sort of level of control. Because what they used then was NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. This was like the 3 mask, face, whatever your job, and then, which I didn't listen to because I knew damn well what they were up to. And every psychologist should have known this. Any normal psychologist should have picked up on this immediately. They flaming didn't. I've got the psychologist in the family are going, oh, go and get it. No. And it's like, no, you've got to listen. You have got to do research online as well. But you know, it's all the mind control they're using, especially TV. The colours they were using at the time, the language, they were emphasising certain words. That's another neuro-linguistic programming technique. They were using classic conditioning, repeating the words. Now they do, a good person to watch is Darren Brown, and this is purely on a psychological note. Darren Brown shows you what you can do with hypnosis. He shows you how you do it. And that's what they were using. So it just gives you an idea. But as you're saying about integrating the shadow, yes, this planet does have negative forces on the planet. And this came in from, as far as I was told, from another universe. And as soon as you come on the planet, these negative influences are flying all around this room everywhere, looking for a little weakness, so they can then attach and feed. So, but the more light you have, the more you pray and lift up your own vibration, the less they can attack you. And even some of the known saints in the past, they would walk into an area and all these negative entities would fly off in terror. And I mean, another one who is good to watch like that is Chris Fleming, Help Your House is Haunted. Now he shows aspects again about getting rid of demonic and other entities when he's helping cleanse houses. Because a house can have something resident by somebody else in the past who's lived there and who's brought in negative energy. So you need to clear the house. That's doing various recitations, or look online, exorcisms and stuff, blessing the place. My Native American friend taught me to do blessings of the four corners, but that's using tobacco, and then using tobacco to cleanse the house, using blessed water to cleanse the house. There's all different aspects you can actually follow to help, and that'll lessen it out. But then if you don't watch it, they'll start coming back in and trying to find a little gap. And we all have traumas, so as soon as you have a trauma, they try and get in then. So, you know, you lose a partner or something like that, they'll try and get in. And this is about us lifting ourselves above that. So that's where, in a way, that it's like the sword of Michael, or like a beaming light, calling the positive energies, calling, if you have a connection to Pleiadians, call them in, but also call angels in. They're higher dimensional beings. That's what they are. Call them in, call God in, whatever. But make sure you say benevolent, and because they're very, very crafty, the negatives. They try and trick you in various different ways. So, but you know when your house is cleared. And also, they can linger in corners that are dusty and things like that. The Chinese know this, and the Japanese. They feed on dust. So like if you dug a dusty corner of the room, that'll be the first place they start to manifest, because what is another sign is your lights will start to dim. That's what I found. All of a sudden you think, is the bulb going? What's going on? Don't know. Don't feel as good as I normally do. And it can be really subtle. And then all of a sudden the room gets darker and darker. Why is the room getting darker? I must change that light bulb. And it's not the light bulb, it's the energy level in the room's dropping. And then, you know, you cleanse the room, you can use sage. I mean, it's not just sage, you've got to do recitations as well as sage. But I really recommend also a clean sweep of your house, you know, letting air in, letting light. Light is a good thing. The more light you have in the house, the better. That's light from the sun, because that really helps. They don't like the light. So all these things help in that respect.
Can I put something?
Yeah.
I noticed about what you said was really interesting about the fact of organ donation, yeah, where you have to opt out, yes? Now in my work, that is a negative completely, because they're asking you to do something other than giving you the free will, yes?
Yeah.
Look, it's a negative connotation, yeah, on that. Now also, they had DNR, yeah? It was forced.
Yes.
Yes? Now, that is taking away people's consent.
It is.
And I have noticed with my work lately, with corporations, everybody, even the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, who regulate companies to stop your data being transferred, they are all ignoring the consent.
Yes.
And they're just taking it away from everybody, and people are not aware of it. You're like, wow, you're really not allowed. But you're saying about entities, communicating with them, and they're not understanding what their thought pattern is.
This is it. They don't. I mean, I used to think, oh God, they're in on the secrets. They're in on what's going on. And then I face to face with it. It's a good thing for me to go to some of these space events and things, because I can read their minds directly that I can't see online. So I read their mind. They're not actually aware how bad they're being. They don't know. And so it's like they're following their orders from above, that are following the orders from above, and they don't realise at the top of this chain it ain't human. And so it's like...
I thought it was because they've been vaccinated, basically. No disrespect, if you took the jab, you took the jab. But that's what I was thinking. Is it the jab that is causing this mind control? Is it a chip?
Frequency.
Yeah, because it's bizarre.
I would say both, really. I mean, they were under mind control from the techniques they were using on the media. So you've got that, and you've got subliminals being used, which is a form of hypnotism. So you've got that. Plus you've got negative entities, especially if they're jabbed. So they're having to fight a little bit more. But consciousness can outweigh those negative entities. But it doesn't mean to say their health will improve. So it all depends. But they can... I've learned, because I had implants myself, and one of these I had black goo, which was put in by reptilians. Now that was removed, but still that they had that in. They didn't have total control of me. Also, I had an implant that was removed physically, and I was abducted when they did that, and I got a scar. I was learning psychically to turn it off, because I had an EMF meter and I would have a reading from it. In fact, the alarm would go off from my lower spine. Then they would turn it back on and I'd get a reading again. Then I'd psychically turn it off again and no reading. Then they'd turn it on again. And then eventually, when I started to go public within the group, they had physically abducted me and removed it. And I was conscious when they started to abduct me. I was conscious of paralysed when the military came and abducted me. So, but they didn't hurt me as such, but they took it out. But then I had the scar afterwards. And then a friend of mine, remote view, because I woke up on an operating table and there was 5 guys in lab coats around me. And not in scrubs, they were in lab coats. And it was definitely an underground base. And then they returned me afterwards, and I got my friend who's very connected to me. He actually remote viewed back to see exactly what they did. But also, the reading stopped from then on in my lower back, and I had a scar, which was like it was like a triangle like that with a line through the middle and dots at the thing. Now I showed that to Simon Parks and he says, yeah, that's a military abduction and they've removed that implant from you. And it really killed that where they'd done that. It was very well welded together like a laser or something, but I had a huge amount of pain there for several weeks afterwards. So whatever implant they removed, it was quite a big one.
So what about the med beds then? Because Simon Parks is obviously mentioning about med beds where they can regenerate you and they can repair everything. So do you know anything about that?
Well, they do have that technology, but I don't know. I'm no longer with Connecting Conscious. I'm no longer in contact with Simon, so he has his own path. But I don't know how positive these groups are. I mean, we haven't seen these machines come to mainstream, and they do have them. So when are they going to bring them out? You know?
Well, I did a bit of research myself, and they want your DNA, basically. So I'm thinking, well, if you want my DNA to heal me, then that's another program.
Yeah, well, I would only go in like the med beds, the proper med beds. They're like a bed you lie on, and it comes around you like a pod.
Yeah.
And it heals you with the frequencies, so they can do a hell of a lot with frequencies. But they haven't brought these forward, and I'm guessing that there's. I don't know what's going on totally, because I only know certain aspects myself. Nobody knows everything that's going on. But what I've seen is that I don't even call white hats and black hats anymore. I say the brown hats. There's black hats and brown hats, because I'm wondering myself. I don't know, but I'm wondering if they all want depopulation because maybe they're expecting some calamity. I don't know, or whether they just all want it. I don't know, but it's not exactly moving positively forward at the moment from any direction.
It's confusing, and that's what
it is for anybody. I mean, it's like
confusing. That's
yeah. I'm not saying there aren't so-called, but I don't use the term white hats anymore. There are brilliant people. There are really spiritual people, but I'm looking at it's all our own. We all have to step forward. I mean, I went on the demos. I went as a veteran because I'm a veteran. I was at the front of some of those demos where the police were like recording. So not all of them, but I was guided to ones that I could go to and what I couldn't go to for my own safety.
I did the same. And I always found myself in a demo where it wasn't, because I've got to be honest, and I mean, I've researched this, and common sense tells me, which isn't very common these days, there were a lot of people on them demos that were on the stage. They were using words, and I was just reading them and thinking, you're not real. You're not real. You're reiterating Satan's echo. You're telling us what we already know. There are no solutions.
Well, this is where we go into our own consciousness and we start learning ourselves, because each person here, we are just as powerful as everybody else here, but it's about learning and stepping forward as well. But if we listen to our guides, we all need to follow our own, we all have our own journey and our own guides to help us, and we all have a separate way forward. But the more we all listen to our guides, the better, because it will bring us all more forward. The more I've stepped forward, the more protective I've been. That doesn't mean to say if I don't listen one day because I'm a bit distracted, something bad won't happen, because you know, they always try different techniques. But the more I've stepped forward, the more I've learned, and the more things I've learned as a defence, and remarkable things have occurred.
It comes into your awareness.
Yes.
I've been looking at copper. Copper for the body is phenomenal. Yeah. And I've been looking at, and I'm using a lot more crystals. And I've experimented with an EMF meter using crystals. And it was conclusive, and I was like, well, it's in front of me, I did it myself. Well,
that's a brilliant thing to do, but also your connection to those crystals that have their own life force. So there's a kind of communication between you and the crystal as well. So it's like a two-way thing with crystals. They are actually a living crystal.
I've tested it with a meter.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
Well, yeah, it works.
Yeah.
It's real. So why do they not speak about Atlantis? Why are we not taught that history?
Everything. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's all hidden from us.
Yeah.
I mean, another good one to watch is like The Dark Journalist. Now, the title's a bit offish, but he covers the proper documentary evidence of them hiding things about Atlantis, about the CIA hiding things. I mean, I've got CIA documents about various things. Some of them, the Omega files, some of them that I copied, and I even copied other aspects like the Deagle depopulation figures. Well, I copied that hard copy, and then, or you can't get it on the internet now. They've changed it. And this is the thing, if you do find something that's really useful, they can also go in your computer, remember that. So hard copies. This is what I've done with certain documents and things. I've hard copied it because when I've had it on my computer in Canada, got completely fried. That died, so all I had left was a very cheap iPad until I got to Britain, and even that got smashed, but luckily I managed to keep it going just long enough. But this is the thing, you know, a computer is not very good at storing anything because they can actually get into it. If you're on the internet, they can get into it. And even if and of course, what they used to do in the past, they'd break into your house and steal your hard copies. But, you know, the more people who've got a hard copy, they can't, you know, physically go into everybody's house. So, you know.
I know, I've had stuff go, I've seen my phone, genuine. You don't have to believe it, nobody has to believe me, but I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen my phone when something's been passed to me, and it was a UFO as it happens, and I saw my phone move in front of me, remove this person's number, and the information and the video he sent me.
Yes, because all that, it's well known, like in Canada, all your message, everything else would go through the NSA. Here it probably goes through Fylingdales, I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, I know so many, I mean, I've been involved with Miles and the bases, I've become friends with him, you know, I just came forward and got used, you know, we got talking and things. And he's seen a lot of people targeted and things, and all sorts of things have happened to him. Because he's come forward with whistleblowers. I mean, I've kind of whistleblowed in my own way, but you know, it's about people stepping forward. He's known quite, as I said, quite a few people killed. So you know, and they did a few attempts on him as well. I was there at one attempt, but you know, he does have. I keep, you know, he needs to call in more protection himself at times, but you forget. You get distracted, and even I forget sometimes.
I don't mind when I work on a piece of information. When I'm working on a case, I would light a candle, I will bang a bell, a brass bell, a copper bell to change the vibration in the room, and I will put out a message. And when I read that work back, I'm like, did I really like that?
Well, that's another pitch as well, because some of the chimes and some of the bells, especially Tibetan bells and things like that, there's a certain frequency, and again the negative fly away from that. They don't like that frequency. It's like to them, it's like an excruciating sound to them. So that's another aspect as well. Certain frequencies really drive away the negative.
I listen to 77432 Hertz, and I play it whilst I'm working, and I'm like, help me. And I've had mediums say to me who don't know me, and I'll come up with certain information people in the room know, and they're like, oh my God. And they say, you look at information, don't you, and you think, how could I have written this? And I thought, there's no way they could have known that. I've never told that. I've told it now, but I've never told that to anybody. And they're like, yeah, because the angels are working with you. I'm like, oh my God. That's exactly, there's other things.
And that's another thing, you've got to be careful. People have got to be careful channeling as well, because some of the negatives can pretend to be angelic in that. And it is quite difficult to distinguish, but it's something to be aware of as well.
If it gets the result, it gets the result. It's got to be pure. Wins.
Yeah, I would say most of the time, if your atmosphere clears and everything like that, you know it's something positive.
Corporations that are taking away people's consents, taking away their rights.
Oh God, yeah.
Trying to make them think that they have to pay bills, they have to pay this. They don't. And nobody, I want to say this, people think I'm not
I won't get into that here, but I understand your perspective. But when you've got, it's a bit like if you got, say, an army that's taken over an area, say in a certain war. It doesn't matter telling them that, oh, it's my right to do X, Y, and Z. They will beat you up until you do what they tell them. You know, so it's right, but, you know, but I don't want to get into that tonight because it's a bit difficult.
What they're using is word magic. In the law,
words are spells, so words can create spells, so that's something to be aware of as well. Yeah. So, like, positive affirmations really help as well.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
Your friends.
Sorry?
You mention about your friends all the time.
Yeah.
Your friends come.
Yeah, well, some of them...
You got friends over there?
I have.
Who are these friends?
Right, I've got angelic, I've got arachnid. If the reptilians come in, I call the arachnids because I've made friends with them, so they're alliance, so I call them in if I get a real tough, nasty being coming in, because they can be physical. And then it depends what comes in. So I do call, as I said, angelic, arachnids, Palladians, and even like the Native Americans taught me, call your ancestors, elders, relatives, and benevolent beings. So, you know, the worse it gets, the more we're calling. So I was like, yeah, one of them's going to help, definitely. And also, yeah, I have friends that I have to protect, a group of people in Canada that saved my life, some of which gave me a safe house when I was very close to being bumped off. And I have to protect their identities because otherwise they will get targeted. So I always respect people who have helped me. Simon, you know, he helped me at a time, but, you know, he's public, so I have mentioned him. But other people I don't mention because I have to protect them, because they might start getting targeted as much. Because sometimes they target friends and family around you too, and they've done that with me. So I kind of try and protect people as much as I can.
They try and isolate you then?
They do try. Yeah, they tried that with me, but I was so blessed to have such wonderful friends. I really am blessed like that.
I just feel that my natural family, my bloodline, I've lost, but I've created a new family.
Well, this is it. Well, a lot of us, with things that are shifting, if their vibration doesn't shift the same as you, then you find new friends, a new family, and I think that's happening to a lot of people.
I honestly think sometimes that they said, oh, there we are, we'll stick her in this family with you and see how she gets on. And they're completely different to me, the whole family.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you could quite often find that actually. Maybe you're the shining light to show them the way, but yeah, I think we all have that as well. So it's like, oh, most people have some sort of differences. But anyway, I think it's time, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, it's getting late. Sorry.
Right. Any more questions?
Yeah, one more.
One more. Yeah.
When you were abducted by the reptilians, and you said you fought back. You told us they're bigger, faster, stronger than you.
I didn't fight back the first time when they abducted. I was owned. That was before I was properly deprogrammed, and that was in 2015 or 2016, and that was. That I was abducted with my husband at the time, so I had nowhere to fight. I had nobody to call because I didn't know to call anybody. And it was only later, after I've been learning and been making other connections, that I managed to understand when I called the other beings in, they would help me, and I didn't know that.
So how did you escape?
Well, what happened is they brought me back, but. I wondered that. Why did they bring me back? Why didn't they just butcher me in the warehouse like everybody else? Others have come back to me and said, well, it's like this. Some they see as pets, and to be quite honest, I was also marked by being an asset for the other reptilians, the Draco reptilians. So I think either they found the markers or they treated me as a pet, which I kind of got from them. But why they would show me what they showed me, I don't know, and I'm not going to go back to ask them. So I like steer clear of them. So
you said your husband was more aggressive. Is that the right word?
Yeah, he was about the toughest person I've ever met. Yeah, my late husband.
React to that aggression?
Well, I think also neither of us were. The worst thing you can do with reptilians is like beg for your life, because they don't respect that at all. So we were like. Because he had a lot of covert military, and ex-military, your training comes in, and then previous agreements between us, and so we weren't going to go out quietly, and I didn't think I was going to survive. I thought I was going to die that day. I had no doubt in my mind I was going to die. I didn't know that I was going to survive. I really didn't think I would. My only thought was, I wonder if I could trigger. Well, me and my husband's thoughts were, I wonder if we could trigger them by trying to escape and trying to get them to kill us before they take us in the warehouse.
So do you think in the end they empathised with you?
No, they're not capable of that sort of empathy. They don't think the same way as us. There would be some other form of logic they had, and I don't. This is I don't want to get involved in any of that. So I mean, the Draco reptilians, they do have a system of order, so they're not like a wild alien that has no thought but to kill. They do have a system in place where it's very controlling, a hierarchical system. But a lot of these species sees us either as vermin, as food, or as something to use in whatever way they want to use us for, as an asset or something else.
So how did you physically escape in the end?
They brought me back, but I don't know why they brought me back. I cannot say. As I said, I'm not going to ask them. So, if they come in at all, I'm calling in defence. It's pretty horrible to go through that. So yeah, so I don't know everything. I don't know why they brought me, because I have told myself that, why did they bring me back? Why didn't they kill me?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I can only assume that certain aspects, because I know about the other reptilians, that there was a reason, but I don't know the reason. Not 100% certainty anyway, I can guess. But that's all I can do.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? Thank you very much for coming. Have a good journey back. And we wish Julie a good journey back to Lancashire. She's come a long way to see us.